2004. As soon as I graduated from high school, I walked off the stage, got into the car, and went to boot camp. Like it was that quick. It was right out the door.
What was the motivation?
I, there is none. I'm not a very emotional guy. I'm very factual. I just do what I do. I try not to let emotion and feelings, play into it. And I was dead set on going to college, being a wrestler, and being a conservation officer. I wanted to go and be outdoors all the time. And literally one day, I walked into the cafeteria at the high school and seen the Marine recruiters up on the stage. And 10 minutes later, I was signing papers. There's no thinking about it. There's no thoughts of deployments or what's going on overseas. There's no motivation. I don't know. I guess I just seen that as a way for me to go somewhere else and see something else.
So at what point then, 2004, things are pretty ugly in Iraq in 2004, and Afghanistan is obviously still going. At what point did it occur to you that you're in the Marine Corps, we got two big fights going on? I'm probably going to get involved in one of these, if not both. Was it boot camp? Was it before boot camp? On the bus on the way to boot camp? When did you make a connection between what's in the news every day and the Marine Corps?
Yeah, I'd say the connection was after SOI, right? Boot camp, there's no significant story about boot camp, right? For me, it was just one foot in front of the other. It wasn't chaotic for me. SOI, same thing. Again, it's just like my mindset and the way I've always come after things is no emotion. Just go out there, keep moving forward. Eventually, there has to be some sort of end line. There has to be some sort of finish line. And so, as soon as I got out of SOI and I got orders to 3-8, that's when it all hit. Because as soon as we got to 3-8, the night that me and I think it was 4 or 5 of us it was at nighttime. We got to 3-8, dropped us off from the bus. As soon as we got there in the company office, it was, hey, we're going to Fallujah in 2-3 months. It was that quick. There was no, we didn't have the traditional Marines messing with us and going through these rituals and whatnot. It was as soon as we got off the bus and we went to the company office, we were prepping for war. And that's when it hit me like, oh, well, here we go.
You serve in Iraq and Afghanistan. These are very, very different fights, but I wonder what similarities, as you look back, what similarities were there between the fights in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, I think there has to be some similarities because when I think about my deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, there's times where I'm looking at individual missions or things happening, and I don't know which one it was in. So it's hard for me to sometimes to put that in perspective. But one, I think, is the shared mission objective. When I was in Fallujah, it was MSRs. We were outside. It was Karmah, really focused on Karmah. So as a weapons company, I was a gunner in a turret in a truck, and it was 8 hours a day of just protecting MSRs, outside MSRs. Right. So we weren't in the city. We weren't going building to building. We were protecting, Michigan and Mobile, the main MSRs, and ensuring that IEDs weren't being in place or things along that line. Ramadi, again, I was in the weapons company again as a gunner, and Ramadi was completely kinetic every single day, fight for your life every single day, buildings and whatnot. So I think it's the same thing. Still, we weren't just going out there to do specific things. It was to disrupt enemy actions, right? Hey, we're going to go down this route. We're going to do this. We weren't pinpointing specific buildings. We weren't trying to do specific things. It was just going out there, having a presence, and disrupting enemy action. And the same thing with Afghanistan. The terrain's different. It's more open. It's not as urban and close quarter, but I just so happened, even though I was in a rifle platoon, they'd given us trucks during the handover, and the CO knew that I had been a gunner in the truck for a few deployments. So they put me in charge of the mobile section for the company, and it was the same thing. You know, we did have specific missions in Afghanistan where resupply missions and things along that line. But at the same time, our goal was still the same. We were to go out there, make sure that our presence was known, and disrupt enemy action. At the same time, everywhere we were at, all of it is hearts and minds, making sure we're not hurting the wrong people, making sure we're helping those people, making sure if someone needs water, we're getting them water. If someone needs medical attention, you give them medical attention. So all that, no matter where you're at, was the same. Disrupt enemy action, make sure your presence is known, hearts and mind. And I think the other thing where they were similar is, although the enemy actions were a little bit different between Iraq and Afghanistan, right? Knowing your enemy was another hard similarity, right? I mean, you don't know who you're fighting. You're not just, they're not wearing uniforms. They're not walking around in squad size helmets like we are and with weapons and whatnot.
Right.
I mean, so not knowing who your enemy is was something else that in all locations that I've been to was a constant threat for us.
So I've noted a few things I want to ask you about. You mentioned the hearts and minds. And as you were saying that, I'm thinking of these IEDs that are going off. And I definitely want to ask you about the IEDs and that part of the war. But these IEDs are going off. Of course, it seems like the locals know where the IEDs are. They're not running over them. I'm hearing from a lot of Iraq vets that they could tell in the marketplace. If there are a lot of people in the marketplace, they're probably not going to get ambushed. If there aren't many people in the marketplace, probably an ambush is coming. So the locals know what's going on. At least a lot of them do. And yet, as you're saying, at the same time, if there's a medical problem, we want to respond to it. We want to win the hearts and minds. But I'm putting myself into the position of a 19-year-old who, after a while, is saying, man, it's really hard for me to care about the hearts and minds of these people, given what we're experiencing. These IEDs are going off. Surely a lot of these people knew the IED was there and they didn't do anything. You see what I'm getting at? I mean, I'm just interested in hearing you talk about, well, first of all, I mean, is there anything to what I'm saying? I mean, you want to win the hearts and minds, but it's so hard in that kind of conflict when you don't know who the enemy is. But at the same time, you can assume that a lot of the locals know who the enemy is and they're not helping you. Even though
Yeah,
the next day you'll turn around and give them medical help if they need it.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a big problem for most people, which is why command and administration would always try to drive that home and find ways to be strategic about telling the Marines or telling the military on why it's important. And I'm not emotional about it. We knew an ID is going to happen. Like you say, you know when ID is going to go off or not going to go off. In Iraq, anyway, you expect it and don't expect it. And I have no way of factually knowing if these people knew or don't know, or the people who are hurt, if they have anything to do with it or not. And I try not to make those assessments. So I mean, for me as a person who doesn't use emotion and bases his life on factual based decisions, it's actually an easier thing to go over there and handle that kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'd say 95% of people, it's spot on, right? ID goes off. The closest people, you're just like, you all knew you had something to do with it, and your anger is automatically taken out on them. But for me, it was very different because of the way I've always been with the way I make decisions and the way I lead based off of lack of emotion.
What I want to do now is kind of ask you to do the same thing with Iraq and Afghanistan. You're on the gun. you're up there, you can see what's going on. But let's say, there's no ID, there's no combat. You're just rolling through some street in Iraq. Pick whatever street you want. I mean, you've got hours of film in your head, right? So, I mean, pick any street you want. You're rolling down the street in Iraq. Obviously, you're alert, you're looking out, but there's nothing going on right now. Let's say the vehicle goes for a half mile, a mile. Just what kind of stuff are you seeing? What are you seeing from where you are?
I think we for different areas, right? So, for Fallujah, or we'll say Karmah, for those main MSRs, it was just lots and lots of people, main highway, cars driving like normal, right? And so I think, and again, this is 2005, early 2005. Tactics are changing. So at the beginning, you're letting cars kind of weave in and out of your convoy and driving like normal. And then towards the end of deployment, you kind of stop that. And so Fallujah, it was not as kinetic for us. It was just long hours on the road, doing vehicle checks and whatnot. So, at points, you could just sit there in that turret and you're driving around, and it's just like being back at home. You're just in a big truck, right? I mean, we're just driving down highways, and I mean the roads are nasty. I mean, there's not there's not painted lines in the road and everything and making it like back home, but the way it all feels is like people are just driving from one point to another, and you're just out there trying to make your presence known. And then when you go to Ramadi, completely different concept. I mean, you're driving around where there's buildings above you, towering above you at all times, and people could throw grenades off rooftops, and you're trying to keep all your sectors. And a lot of times I remember like goats and stuff being just carved in the side of the road, hanging up on the side of the street there, and people dumping buckets of trash in the street, and uh, completely different feeling than when we were in Karmah and Fallujah. Just it was Fallujah. You had the opportunity to drive around and not get attacked for 2 weeks and feel like you're just driving on the highway. Where Ramadi was every single day, you were getting some kind of sniper attack, IED attack, RPG attack, small arms fire, ambushes. And you couldn't help but feel like everybody was some sort of threat. You had to be on your toes 24/7. So you're always looking for where the next attack could come from.
I want to pick up on that you're on your toes 24/7. Let me spell out this scenario for you. So you're the gunny. I'm an E3, and I'm hearing, okay, hearts and minds. Okay, but I've been out on a couple tours. I've been out on a couple patrols, and I've experienced what you're just describing. I'm looking everywhere. Everybody's a potential enemy. An IED is, there's a dead dog, maybe an IED's in that. There's a pile of trash, maybe an IED's in that. I'm looking up here. What are those people? Oh, they're doing their laundry. Are they a threat? You know what I mean? And that goes on for hours, and it's exhausting. And at the same time, I'm told that we've got to win over their hearts and minds. And so I'm an E3, and I say, Gunny, how are we supposed to do this? Everybody's a threat, and then I'm supposed to turn that off and win hearts and minds. So now, as an E3, I'm asking you, as the Gunny, how do we do this? What's the procedure?
Yeah, and I think that deployment was the least that was talked about with hearts and minds. That wasn't really the main focus there. That focus was for our hearts and minds in Ramadi in 2006. At the time, this is the most dangerous city in the world. It is chaos. It's them bringing people to our camps, and we like, hey, my daughter got hurt or got shot by this or something, and we're helping them out. Which even then, about halfway through the deployment, that even got to a point to where, that was even dangerous because they'd bring in bleeding kids who had bombs shoved inside of them. Like it was just, even that got chaotic. So the hearts and mind was big for us in Karmah. Marjah was a big one, sitting down with tribal leaders and trying to help them with jobs. And I mean, I was a sergeant at the time, so that was the first time I've heard of like us giving them money. I know it's happened all the time. I was just too young to understand it, but like us help trying to give them money for projects, make them work and earn money by building their own schools and water wells and stuff along that line. Ramadi, there just wasn't time for it. There was no, if we stopped and, and we had Marines that were killed doing that. Like if you stopped for more than 15 minutes checking cars, you were going to get hit with a sniper. Right. And we learned that lesson the hard way. We've lost a Marine in my truck because of that, and so it was the hearts and minds in Ramadi was a very low key concept that was discussed. We still don't want Marines running around just killing everybody that moves. That's still not the intention. We're still not trying to create more enemies than we already have, right? And I'm sure that happens all the time when you circled one of those things in my book about the wrong house, right? Like you go into the wrong house and kick open the wrong doors. People that were on your side, you could have just made them no longer on your side. So you have to be, I think that is the hearts and minds for us in Ramadi was don't create more enemies than you have to. And it's a very hard line to not cross while protecting yourselves and protecting the civilian population. Afghanistan was very different for me. Same mission, same concept, but very different on the way we did things. So the terrain was open, a lot of wadis, a lot of you're driving water on one side and desert on the right side, and that was the first time for me as me being a section leader and patrol leader and working with outside forces like the Afghan police or the ANA or something along that line. So that was the first time where I had to actually I've done patrols with Afghan police vehicles, trucks in my convoy. So it was a different thing for me. But the people were different for us there in Marjah. Like when you say on Iraq, if you're going to go to, like you say, go to the market and it's empty, you're going to get hit. That's not the same case in Afghanistan. We don't know how many times we had to go help people where their cars drove over IEDs that were meant for us, but civilians didn't know what was going on, and they were the ones getting hit by that. And we go respond and help them out and do that. But the enemy there was different for me anyway. The enemy in Iraq for me was run and gun, shoot from the rooftop, then move over here, come out in the street on drugs and just come out and pull the trigger as long as you can before you get shot or something like that. Was Iraq for me was not conventional, not like they didn't feel like they communicated with each other. It was just a bunch of people out there trying to cause chaos and whatnot. We had a couple large scale attacks, like the day I was shot by the sniper, like that was a complex attack. But Afghanistan for me always felt like it was well thought, and they were real fighters. They would come after us in fire teams, and they would envelop us and they would follow us. It wasn't a run and gun. So Afghanistan was a little bit different. So the people, I spent more time talking to the people in Afghanistan, sitting down and having meals with them and shuras and all and whatnot. But I felt like the people weren't a priority to the enemy in Afghanistan. Like they weren't scared. They would go over the loudspeaker and say, "Hey, we're calling for you to come and do jihad." And everyone knew what was going on. In Afghanistan, it wasn't like that.
IEDs are, of course, a major topic in both conflicts. And sometimes you talk to vets of both conflicts, Afghanistan and Iraq, and it seems that their combat isn't really combat in the sense of back and forth, fighting an enemy. Their combat is just going out and getting blown up by IEDs, and there's no one to shoot at. Sometimes there'll be, an ambush will follow, but mostly it's just, I spent a year over there getting blown up by IEDs. That's mostly what we experienced. To what extent was that true in your case?
Yeah, so definitely the case in first deployment, right? In Fallujah, the outskirts, IEDs was the main threat. We probably had a handful of, at least for my section of firefights, IEDs is the most threat, and it wasn't even a huge threat at that point. I've always said from the beginning, when I first got to Fallujah, we had trucks that had no doors. They had trucks that were hodgepodge together of just different vehicles, and the IEDs were very very small. And the more we up armored our vehicles, the bigger the IEDs got. I mean, they're not idiots either. They don't want to use all of their munitions. They want to use what they can to get the job done, so they can have more of them. And so that's just how I always viewed it. The more we up armor our vehicles, the more dangerous they made the IEDs.
And this is in both places, Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, and then and Ramadi was IEDs were bad. I mean, I got hit by 7 or 8 IEDs myself in my truck in Ramadi. But firefights were every day as well. IEDs wasn't the main call. It was straight up fighting every single day. It was RPGs and grenades and shooting back and forth ambushes. I mean, it IEDs were a threat and a huge threat, but it wasn't the only threat. Like Ramadi was tough. Ramadi was a fight. I mean, we Newsweek came out and wrote with us that the day I got shot, the reporter was with us and talked about some of the things that they went through. Like, I mean, it was a fight. Ramadi was not just going out there and waiting to get blown up. They were attacking the base every day. They were, I mean, you were leaving the wire and taking shots as soon as you go. There's snipers all over the place. I mean, it was a straight up fight. And then Afghanistan, it was less kinetic, but I think it was even. The IEDs weren't great for us in Marjah. Again, 3-2 was before us, and they cleared that city, right? So who knows what kind of stuff they went through? Talking to some 3-2 vets, it was a straight up fight for them as well. Like Ramadi was, the battle of Ramadi was for us. But they cleared that city, and then when we relieved them, my section, what I was in charge of, we got hit by 1 IED that deployment. So it's nothing like Ramadi, where my truck alone got hit by a bunch of IEDs. Wow. So I had more firefights than IEDs in Afghanistan, but it was nothing like Ramadi. I mean, it might have been like 1 every week or so. I mean, it wasn't nearly as kinetic.
Wow. So is there a psychological difference? I mean, let's say, okay, the mission's open, you're back on base. In one case, you go out, hit an ID, maybe another truck hits an ID, but there's no one to fight. Just the ID goes off and that's it. Maybe someone gets wounded or worse from the ID, but there's no one to fight back. The other day, you go out, something happens, you are able to fight back. There's an enemy to shoot at, you do that. You go back to the base. Psychologically, does it make a difference being in a position where you're able to fight back as opposed to being in a position where you're just getting blown up and there's no one to fight back against?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a big difference. Fallujah was like that, right? You get hit by an ID, nothing happens. You drag your truck back, you're done for the day. I mean, that was just how it was. Ramadi, they did a good, our command did a good job on combating that, and it was, and I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, but like if you're in Ramadi and your truck gets hit by an IED, you're dragging your truck back to the base. You're getting a new truck and you're going back out. Our section got hit 5 times in one night. We called it Hell Night. We got 5 different IED blasts in one night that you just go back and get a new truck and keep going. Right. So that combats that though. When you're still in the fight, when your truck gets blown up and you go get a new one and you just keep going, you're no longer like that combats that psychological warfare. Like you're always on your game. And Ramadi was a full deployment of you start off first couple months it's just chaotic and you're fighting for your life and doing whatever you have to do to survive. And then you hit a point during that deployment where you're just like, hey, you know what? It is what it is. You can't control the outcome. You just do your job. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. It is what just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so that shift happens to everybody to where you just accept the fact. So I think that by doing things like ID goes off, destroys your vehicles, you go back, you switch it out, you get back out there and keep finishing the patrol. By doing things like that, I think it maintains you being combat effective, but it also does a toll on you mentally in the long run when you come back and you're no longer deployed and you have to decompress from that concept.
I want to ask you about your Purple Heart, this firefight where you are hit and then you get that Purple Heart. What happened?
So we were on a patrol on 20th Street, which is a well-known kinetic place in Ramadi, and had reporters with us from Newsweek. And truck one hits an IED, and immediately upon the IED strike and us setting a cordon around it, we just get a full-on ambush of just enemies all on the rooftops, down the street. I mean, we're just taking fire from everywhere. I mean, it's just a straight up movie style gunfight. And so, I mean, I just remember being there for a long time. I was on the 50 cal and just had people come around. I was watching the street, and it was just buildings on both sides of the street. And they would just come out from the ends of the buildings, 100, 150 meters away and just shooting at our convoy. And I had the 50 cal just trying to stop and protect that avenue. So that was the only gunfight that I've been in to where it was so hardcore that I was getting to the end of not having any more 50 cal ammo, where I had to kind of say, hey, we're about to be Winchester here. We're about to be out. Like we were seriously short on ammo because the recovery truck that was coming to get our vehicle also got hit by an IED.
Oh, wow.
So that just compounded it. Yeah. And so I remember the CO, he was out there with us that day, had the handset and he had to go run off and check on something else. So he's like, I was the only one in the truck because everybody else was dismounted and trying to gain superiority and whatnot. And he's like, hey, just throw this in your ear. Keep doing what you're doing. Just throw this in your ear. So if you hear me yelling for you about something, you can at least be informed because you're by yourself over here in this truck. And as I reached down to get the handset from him, a sniper got around through my Kevlar. So went through my Kevlar, rounded the inside of it, and blew out the back.
Wow.
And so I had dropped immediately to the point where they thought I was dead immediately. They just thought I was gone. It actually had gotten back to my family. So when my dad passed away from a heart attack, they told me this story. I had no idea. And they said on that day, a Marine had called and told his girlfriend about it afterwards. And she had somehow contacted my mom and had told my mom that I'd been killed in action.
Wow.
And so it's just, and what it was is that the impact of the round, when it went through the Kevlar, I guess the way they explained to me was just the brain swelling, the immediate brain swelling just knocked me unconscious. And to where they had to medevac me out and go get MRI. And I was there for a couple of days to monitor my brain to where I eventually could go back into Ramadi a few days later. And so the immediate thought was, this dude's dead. And so, eventually, I think it was like 3 or 4 days later, I was able to come back to Ramadi, continued patrolling and and keep doing whatever we're doing, get back into that fight. So, I mean, and the thing about it, at that point, we'd gotten up on our Humvees, and so that's when like the square turrets had gotten introduced, and we had little windows in there, and it made us gunners feel a lot safer compared to the older turrets. And if you got the hood of the Humvee, there's like a 1 inch gap, and there's a bar that goes across, and that's basically what the turret sits on. It's when it spins, and there's just this little gap between the hood and the bar there. And when I had bent down, that sniper had gotten that round in that 1 inch gap.
Wow.
That luck, skill. I mean, who knows? But
What was your thought? I mean, it's kind of incredible. You get hit in the helmet, the bullet goes in, around out the back. But it sounds like you're back in the fight within, what, 4 or 5 days, something like that. Um, what was your own thinking process about that? Was like, man, I'm not sure I want to go back out, or man, I want to go back out, or whatever. What was
oh
your own
no, no,
position?
I was fighting to get back. I was trying to get out of the hospital as fast as possible to get back. I mean, you build a relationship with the 16, 17 people that you're out there every single day going through this stuff, and Ramadi, we're losing people. We're losing people all the time in Ramadi, and when you are losing a gunner, that's all I could think about. Is like, I've always thought, like, one, I was blessed on how my career went, right, as a machine gunner, because a lot of machine gunners don't get to go do their job. They don't. They learn their job. They train. They train. They try, and they never get to go actually do their job other than going to a machine gun range and whatnot. I got the opportunity as soon as I left school of a machine gunner. Within months, I was in Iraq. I've had opportunities and opportunities and opportunities to do my job as a machine gunner. So one, I always felt like I was blessed as a machine gunner to get the career I got to actually do my job. At the same time, being a machine gunner is a dangerous job in a truck, in a turret, right? IEDs, snipers, grenades being dropped down. I mean, you're just in the open. You're just And so if I'm not there, someone else has to take that spot who may not be an experienced machine gunner. So it's going to be whoever they can put up there.
Yeah.
It could be a mortarman or an assaultman or someone who's hardly ever shot a machine gun before. So now that becomes dangerous for the mission, dangerous for the men, and dangerous for the individual. So that's all I could think about was who they're going to put into my gun. I need to get back and get that spot back before somebody gets hurt.
And that leads me to the topic of what it is that sometimes combat vets miss about being in combat. I mean, I've heard this so many times. I'm interested in your reaction. Combat vets say, war sucks. It's terrible. It's horrible. You carry it with you the rest of your life. But there is something about it that you sometimes miss. And one of the things that I hear more than any other thing, you hear about the adrenaline and that, but one of the things that they say is you dismiss that incredible bond that, I may not necessarily even like this Marine next to me, but I'll die for him. And I know he'll die for me. And we're absolutely committed to one another. And this incredible bond that I don't think folks in the civilian world or in the military outside of combat really experience. It sounds to me like that's kind of what you're getting at, that, I want to get back into the fight, not so I can be heroic or something, but because those Marines out there need me out there. Does that fit with what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a difference between, I mean, the bond is 100% part of it, and you know, you go and look at a lot of these Marines, and especially from that section, I don't know how many of them have this 3 Bravo tattoo on them, right? Like that. Of all my sections and all my squads and all my units I've been with, like that's the one I always refer to as 3 Bravo. Us and Ramadi. and it has to go to show that's the most kinetic deployment. I've been in all kinds of them, all kinds of units and squads and sections and with different teams and whatnot. But the most kinetic one is the one that I always refer to, and it's the one I think about the most and connect with the most. But I think they're, we this happens in July, right? So I've been there for a few months. So I've already been through all the fighting. I've already been through, I've already accepted the fact that there's a chance I'm not coming home. There is what it is, and nothing I can do about it. So it's a lot easier for me to, to leave and come back 3 days later and say, let's get back into this. I mean, mentally, I've already accepted that this is it. So I'm getting back. There's no fear at that point to get back into the fight and do what you got to do.
When you first got to Iraq, were you an E3?
No, I was a PFC. I was
Okay.
an E2.
E2, wow, okay.
Yep.
So when you first get to Iraq, you're an E2, and then you move up through the ranks, you retire as a gunny, E7, I think. Um,
Yep.
how would you characterize the difference? If you just kind of, think through your combat tours, Iraq, Afghanistan, you're rising in rank, so your job's changing as you go. How is each tour different depending on the rank you had?
I think it gets more challenging, right? I mean, it's really easy to be an E2 that you're responsible for cleaning a machine gun and firing a machine gun, and that's the only thing you worry about. You're not doing patrol orders. You're not doing you're not working on a truck. I mean, your only job is to focus on that one thing. And then as you progress, there's more that gets compiled on top of that, and your scope starts to broaden. And now not only are you responsible for more material things, right? Like, when Ramadi, you go from I'm no longer just worried about a gun. Now I'm having more concern over helping out the vehicle commander and getting chow and stuff ready and making sure logistics are good. And you get to Afghanistan. Now, instead of one truck, I'm responsible for 4 trucks, and I'm responsible for looking at patrol orders and IEDs on the map and making sure resupplies are being like, and you're not just in charge of logistics and materials. Now you have people that you're in charge of. And that becomes a whole different beast on its own. Like your decisions don't just affect yourself, it affects other people. And then going as far as, Somalia, when I'm a gunny, I mean, there's 700 people in that camp. So you go from one person that you're worried about yourself and whatever you got to, and then you got 4 people you're worried about, or 3 people on yourself. Then you go to 12, and then it just keeps growing and growing and growing to now 700 people. And I don't think the way you make decisions changes. I think it's just the repercussions on the back end that hit you more. For me, it didn't change the way I made decisions. I always just make a decision. I don't hesitate. If it's right or wrong, it's right or wrong. If it's wrong, it affects me, yada, 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 right? I think the thing that I didn't like the most was the back end of it. If I made the wrong decision, how did it affect other people? And how do I stop that from happening again? I think a lot of Marines, when they're younger, when you're a PFC Lance Corporal, you can't wait to be in charge of people. You can't wait to call the shots. I mean, that's it's never about money or getting more money. It's never about the rank on your shoulder. It's never about the appearance of it. It's being able to call the shots. And I was no different, right? Like, I wanted to be in control. I wanted to be in charge. How many times as a younger Marine or a younger person, you're like, man, the way this person's doing this, I would do it completely different. I can't wait till I can do it my way and be a better way. And the first time you make a decision, right, you pick the route to go from this resupply to the next mission. That's the specific thing. We're leaving this OP, and I picked the route to go to the next part of our mission. And that first truck got hit by an IED, And it's the first time you realize that your decisions, like I said earlier, your decisions have consequences, and that you are the sole reason that that Marine, that driver in truck one is hurt because you decided to take that route instead of going this other way. And that right there was a hard pill to swallow of, hey, this, being in charge and calling the shots isn't always as romantic as you thought it was as a young Marine. Where that IED went off and I froze. Like I just like it happened. This just happened. And it took a while in that deployment for anything like that to happen. We had some really good moments in there. We had, reactions to attacks on our COP. We were able to go out, stop, deny the enemy, and deflect them. We had some really good moments there. That was the first moment on that deployment to where I was in charge and something like that happened. And so you start to get a little confident, overconfident. Like everything we do has been great. We've stopped this enemy. We killed this enemy and prevented this ambush. We found this IED. We helped these people over here. And that starts to compound, and you start to feel like you're invincible. You're doing really, really great things. You're like, man, this is awesome. I'm doing really good at this being in charge thing. And then that happens. It's just it's a lot of reflection to look on that and realize, hey, you could have went the other way and people could have died instead. Like it took me a while to think through that, to where, yeah, you made that decision and someone got hurt and IED went off, but you have no idea of knowing what the other decisions could have led to. So maybe be thankful for the decision. It took a while. It took a lot of reflection for me to get to that point.
What do you have to say about the Navy Corpsmen?
Oh, I love them. I've been blessed with the best corpsmen ever. I love them. I think it's a little bit different from my perspective because all my deployments have been in trucks, whether I'm a turret gunner, vehicle commander, patrol leader with whatnot. So I've always had, for some reason, I've always had a corpsman in my truck. I just so happened to be, there's only one corpsman per that section that usually rides with us. And sometimes there's a shortage of corpsmen. I've just been lucky that every single deployment I've been on, I've had a corpsman in my truck. And so I think they're great. I think they're absolutely fantastic. I loved working with them. I loved having them there, and being able to share a truck with corpsmen all those years and every single deployment. To me, I mean, a lot of times you forget that they're Navy corpsmen. They just feel like they're part of us. They're wearing the same uniform as us, everything. They're just, you just don't even put a difference between Navy corpsmen and Marines. They're just part of the team.